I do want to share with you one little experience that I have sometimes as I introduce the next part of our service before we conclude. Some people comment to me, and I think to the other rabbis and to the cantor as well, every so often they say, it must be really hard to be a rabbi, to do what you do. And usually those comments come when we find ourselves in difficult situations, in life or death situations, in very trying times. I think what those people mean when they say it, and what I think when I think it, is confronting life and death situations on a regular basis is difficult. And it's true, it is a challenge. But those moments are also among the greatest joys that we have as rabbis and as cantors and as a community, because we have the opportunity through encounter with each other to be constantly reminded of why Judaism is such a force for good in this world, why it can add so much depth to our lives, why we struggle so hard to keep it alive. Every time I sit with my students, for example, or at someone's bedside, I'm reminded that we carry such a treasure in this tradition. And that is why I wanted to share a little piece of that with you, because it's my privilege to experience it all the time. And I wanted to share it with you. We did. It is a privilege tonight, as a gift to us all, that I've asked one of our young people, one of our shining lights in our high school, with a deep Jewish soul, to share words of Torah with us. Leah Sherman, like many in our high school, but as a leader among them, I must add, reminds me, with her love of learning and her passion for Judaism, why this sanctuary, the physical one, the spiritual one, the temporal one that we sit in tonight, is a light to the world. So I ask you to join me, if you know it, and you can say amen if you don't, to the blessing for studying Torah, because we will learn Torah from this young woman and from the light within her. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So Leah, we'd love to hear from you words of Torah.
I recently learned how to high jump. I competed for the first time a week and a half ago, and let's just say that it was less than successful. I had 3 attempts to clear each height. On the first height, I knocked down the bar on my first 2 attempts. On my 3rd attempt, it was worse. Upon hitting the mat, I saw the bar fall. What I did not see was my knee coming towards my eye. When I realized that I had just kneed myself in the eye, I was shocked and rather embarrassed. While reflecting on last week's Parsha, I thought back to kneeing myself in the eye. In that Parsha, God gave us many rules to follow. Some of them, like that which states that eating a sacrifice on the 3rd day results in getting disowned, seem harsh. However, most are benevolent. The majority of the laws in last week's Parsha relate to helping and respecting those who need it most. I think that this is like God trying to prevent us from kneeing ourselves in the eye. He is helping us to help each other. God tells the Jews to leave the edges of the field for the poor. For many farmers, this may have been a high bar to get over. Perhaps there was a small crop of food one year, and a family did not have much to spare. They would most likely be reluctant to leave the edges for the poor. However, by leaving the edges untrimmed, they will be helping those who need it most. God is teaching humans to protect each other. We should not only look out for ourselves, but be responsible for the well-being of those around us. This is seen again when God says not to place a stumbling block before the blind. Not only should we not disable those who require assistance, but we must aid them in reaching success. This Parsha begins with God saying, "You are holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." He then goes on to give the rules about respecting and aiding our fellow man. Like the body, all of mankind is connected. In the high jump, Any part of the body not going high enough can cause the bar to fall. Similarly, any human who does not reach his full potential will lessen the success of everyone. Collectively, we can only be as strong as our weakest link. Thus, we are responsible for ensuring that everyone reaches their full potential. Many runners and bystanders at the Boston Marathon last Monday embodied this holiness as they acted to save the victims of the bombings. At the Boston Marathon, 2 bombs were planted near the finish line of the 26.2-mile race. 3 people were killed and over 260 were injured in the blasts. After running 26.2 miles, I cannot imagine the exhaustion that the body feels. Still, there are stories of runners who, after crossing the finish line, ran an additional 2 miles to the hospital to give blood. There are stories of runners who went towards the blasts to save the injured, who carried people away with lost limbs from the scene of the explosion to safety. These people forgot their own exhaustion and mustered their final bits of strength to rescue others. I think that this is the epitome of what last week's Parsha is truly about. This Parsha is about selflessness. It's about giving what you have, regardless of how small, to help those in need. This Parsha tells us not to place stumbling blocks before the blind or insult the deaf. God is telling us that we have a responsibility for the well-being of those around us, and the first responders at the Boston Marathon took on that responsibility without thought for their own safety. By carrying people who had lost limbs to safety, the first responders carried the injured around these stumbling blocks. Still, many of the injured have only just begun to overcome the stumbling blocks in front of them. The lives of those who lost limbs will be forever changed. In the weeks and months to come, we must not forget about them and keep them in our hearts and prayers. Last week's Parsha says, "Do not favor the poor or show difference to the rich. Judge your kinsmen fairly." I believe that this is another quote that we need to keep in mind in the wake of this tragedy. We must not look at the injured differently because of the wounds that they bear. This applies not only to the victims of the bombings, but also to anyone who has a disability. We need to treat them equally in order to preserve their dignity, and the Torah recognizes this. The first responders have been trained to run towards danger when everyone else is running away. Again and again, first responders save lives and become a vestige of American gratitude and pride in the wake of great tragedy. And the runners and first responders at the Boston Marathon were no different. They have flown over the bar that God has set for us all, and I strive to be more like these runners, embodying selflessness, respect, and strength of mind and body to pull through such arduous situations as they have.
I'm sure you understand why when Leah offered these words of Torah last Shabbat morning to those who were in this chapel and to many of her peers, I wanted to share it with you. I wanted her to share it with you because this is, in a very physical way, what our Judaism offers the world, and we're so proud to be a congregation that perpetuates that in our young people. We're honored to see it in action. So yasher koach to you, Leah.